Hey everyone, Tim here from SnapAttack. Let's dig into this week's Threat SnapShot. Today, we're going to be talking about Lockbit Ransomware and the gang behind it. Our friends over at Avertium have put out this great blog post detailing the history of the gang and the ransomware itself. And there's really three main things I'd like to highlight. First, they operate as a ransomware as a service organization, meaning that criminals and affiliates can buy in to use the ransomware. This leads to some more varying TTPs and tradecraft because it's not as targeted like a nation-state actor that uses similar TTPs. Secondly, while most of the victims are targets of opportunity, the malware itself is very targeted, meaning that each infection is going to have unique indicators of compromise and that you can't rely on IOCs or even antivirus to stop this threat. Third of all, that this ransomware itself, they use a double extortion method, meaning that they're going to bundle up all of your sensitive files and exfiltrate those, as well as encrypt them. So there's two ways that they're going to make you pay. Either if you want to decrypt the files, or if you want to make sure those sensitive information doesn't get leaked on the internet. Ultimately, again, FBI and other organizations recommend that you don't pay the ransom, simply because if it is financially motivating to the organization and they can profit from it, they're going to continue to do it. However, I realize that's not always practical. So that's why we wanted to cover Lockbit Ransomware and some of the things that you can do to stop it. Let's actually pivot over to SnapAttack and take a look at a couple samples here. So this first one is Lockbit 2.0. Before July, this was the primary sample that was being used widely. And we'll take a look at some of the indicators here and what it leaves behind. As you can see from our session and those that are familiar, anything that's interesting here is going to be labeled as a red star. Those are different parts of the attack. And ransomware itself really isn't that interesting visually, so we'll watch it play in the video. It's doing its encryption processes and things in the background. And over here at the end, you're going to see that it actually changes the desktop background, drops the ransom note, and this machine, all of that happened in a matter of minutes. So it's typically what your organization is going to see when you have fallen victim to this ransomware attack. Most interestingly, again, if we take a look at the process grapher here, and again, this ransomware is being run as clickme.exe, there's quite a bit of living off the land techniques that they use. We can see here that they spawn cmd.exe, and there's a lot of effort being put to make sure you can't recover your files. So you're going to see they're using VSSadmin, the volume shadow copy tool, to delete shadow copies. For good measure, they're also going to use WMIC to delete shadow copies. Going to do some other inhibiting recovery here with BCD edit, again, disabling recovery. And they're also using WB admin to delete the catalog. So again, they really want you to pay. Also, interestingly enough, at the end of this execution, it launches itself again with this fsutil, and it's going to zero out the file here. Again, really trying to make sure that you can't pull a sample back and analyze it. So definitely some anti-forensic mechanisms here, but again, lots of different indicators here across this path. Fortunately, that means there's lots of detection opportunities too for this. So there are analytics like this one here that are going to look at those various command lines. So using WMIC and shadow copy and other things together in the combination that makes this quite signaturable. Lockbit also touches a lot of very specific registry keys, or leaves very kind of known things back on the file system that you could look for. And then again, there's some of those generic techniques like deleting shadow copies that, again, are used by a lot of different ransomware. You can see here we have an Evil Corp Wasted Locker sample. So again, these are also very good ways that you can detect this. Another thing that I'd like to just kind of mention here is that earlier this month, they really started rolling out this Lockbit 3.0. It has a lot of additional anti-analysis and invasion techniques. And this is a great blog post by our friends over at SentinelOne that talks through this. Unlike the old ransomware that you could just double click and run, these you have to launch with a password. Again, it also helps prevent analysis. So even if these files do get uploaded to VirusTotal or things like that, it is going to take a little bit additional effort to decrypt the ransomware and analyze, but there are certainly lots of good analysis that have been done. Taking a look at this in SnapAttack here, again, ransomware, not a whole lot interesting that you can see while it's encrypting files. 3.0 is also called Lockbit Black. You're going to see here they've simplified the ransom wallpaper, but you still do have that ransom note where you can open that up and it'll tell you where to go to, again, recover your files or where to pay the ransom. There is definitely a lot less that happens with 3.0, and they've made quite a bit of improvements. You can see here they're no longer using a lot of those living off the land binaries, and ultimately most of the attack techniques are using embedded Windows API calls. So at an EDR level, this is harder but not impossible to detect, and ultimately it just means you need to stop them earlier in the kill chain. There certainly are different ways to detect this. Again, there is that password variable that's set on the command line, as well as this K argument, which together is pretty rare. But again, really you shouldn't want to be stopping ransomware by the time it's being executed. I will say with 3.0 there is some fun things here. So this ransomware organization does have a bug bounty program, which I thought was amusing. And earlier this month, they did actually, somebody, when they were reverse engineering it, found that that password phrase is actually vulnerable to a buffer overflow. So if you throw enough data at it, you can bypass that encryption routine and get it to decrypt. So even hackers and the ransomware authors do make mistakes like this. So just thought that was amusing. Again, in terms of defending and detecting against this, really like everything in SnapAttack, and when we talk about kill chains, ransomware just doesn't appear on your endpoints and infect your systems. They go through the normal attack pattern of gaining initial access, moving laterally, escalating privileges, being able to deploy that. So Trend Micro has a good blog post detailing some of the historical TTPs and some of the various campaigns. So you can see here, compromising an external public-facing web server, again, using PowerShell, using tools like PowerShell Empire. I've seen Cobalt Strike being used a lot, too, to deploy this ransomware. They use a lot of valid credentials, whether those are brute force accounts or whether they are buying already hacked organization accounts off the dark web, and then just using those to gain initial access. Again, using SMB shares and lots of common lateral movement techniques to move around and deploy the ransomware. So ultimately, again, the goal is to find as many different attack paths that you can and stop them earlier in the kill chain. From what we've seen on some blog posts, that the average infection length is about 20 days from initial access to when the ransomware is deployed. Obviously, if you can stop them earlier in that kill chain, you can prevent the damage from happening. So again, talking about, how can I defend myself against this? Definitely with the use of valid accounts and things, immediately comes to mind using two-factor authentication, making sure you have strong password policies and you rotate them frequently. Those alone would stop a lot of these attacks. Thinking back to some of those things like your web servers and vulnerable things, just making sure you're patching your external facing web applications. Again, think low-hanging fruit things like Log4j. A lot of these criminal organizations, like I said, are looking for targets of opportunity. So making sure that it's not easy, low-hanging fruit for them to get access to your networks is really going to go a long way. Third thing, again, obviously you can use a tool like SnapAttack to better defend yourself against all the different MITRE ATT&CK TTPs and all of the tradecraft earlier in the kill chain. Again, we take a detection in-depth approach, and with SnapAttack, our subscribers can pull validated analytics and detections, deploy them confidently to their SIEMs EDRs, and they can use attack simulations to validate those controls in a production environment. All of that and more is available in our enterprise subscription, and definitely check it out. If you'd like to set up a demo, you can always contact us on our website. Hope you found this tutorial and this discussion here on Lockbit helpful. We'll see you next time. This is a weekly series, so like, subscribe, and hope you stay ahead of the threat.